What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Angler's Choices YouTube channel. I'm Matt from SBFISHING, and today I'm gonna break down everything that I do to fish the drop shot. Oh my. So this has probably been my most fish catching bait of the summer. I'm one of those people that fall under the category of actually liking the drop shot. Some people despise throwing it, but there's no denying that it straight up just catches fish. It's an awesome technique that if you're not already implementing into your arsenal, it's something you definitely should. It works year round. You can fish it in every depth range. And again, it just straight up catches fish. So we're gonna go over my rod, reel, line, weight, baits, where to fish it, how to fish it, and I'll share a couple fish catches with you guys as well. So I've been out here on Lake Chesden for the last day and a half, and the drop shot has been by far the best bait that I've thrown. And I know you guys can't see my deck right now, but I've got 10 other rods sitting on the deck, and I've tried a little bit of everything, and it seems like every time I pick this drop shot up, I'm catching fish. I'm gonna start talking about the rod selection. So for me, I like a drop shot rod that's 7 foot to 7.3, typically medium light to medium. I like something that has a lot of tip to it, and that's for when you're working the bait back. The tip of the rod is basically just loading up as you get to the weight, and you can just slowly drag it and you feel so much. You also don't want a super heavy rod because that's going to make it difficult to throw some of the lighter weights that you'll be throwing, and you don't want to pull a bait away from a fish if you have way too much tip, or if you're setting the hook on them, then you're going to put stress on your light line and light hook. You basically have to have your whole setup in a nice flow. Light line, light wire hook, light weight. You want a lighter rod. Any spinning reel will work. I personally am using a Shimano Stratic 2500, and I've got that paired up with 15-pound braid going to a 10-pound fluorocarbon leader right now. With the fluorocarbon leader, I will generally go between 8-pound test and 12-pound test. It really just depends on what kind of water that I'm fishing. In open water scenarios, 8-pound test, and dirtier water or areas where I'm throwing the drop shot that has a bunch of cover, whether that's rock or wood or brush piles, that's where I'm going to lean more towards the 10 and 12. Let's talk about your drop shot baits. I would say 75% of the time I'm throwing a robo worm on the drop shot. I really like the 6-inch robo worm. They have about 1,000 different colors you can choose from, and they also have the larger size robo worm, and they have one smaller than this standard 6-inch. But there's other baits besides robo worm that I will throw. I really enjoy throwing the Zoom dead ringer. It's like a little 4-inch cut tail worm. That does really well. The Guggen Baits Drag and Drop, Strike King half shell, 10,000 fish shimmer shad, and flatworms, of course. There's really no limits to what you can put on your drop shot. It's just what you come down to being comfortable with and what you can figure out. As far as hooks go, I've got it pinned down to 2. I really like throwing the Gamakatsu split shot, drop shot hook, and a 1/0 Gamakatsu G-Lock. So that's something that probably not a ton of people throw on their drop shot, but my brother started doing it. The hookup ratio is phenomenal. The reason I'm throwing the G-Lock is, again, dependent on water and what kind of cover I'm fishing, but anytime we're needing to fish these drop shots through brush piles or rock piles and really getting it up under docks and stuff like that, just places where your cover is going to be a little more gnarly and you want to keep your bait as weedless as possible, the G-Lock is a phenomenal hook for it. It's still small, it fits even some of the smallest baits that you have, still keeps all the action in the worm. Once we get away from more of that cover, that's where I'll switch up to the Gamakatsu drop shot hook. I also will do that if I'm finding the bite to be extremely tough. So for the weight, I'm generally gonna stick between 1/8 and 1/4 ounce. The deeper I'm fishing, obviously I'm gonna lean more towards that 1/4 ounce, and if I'm fishing shallower or if we're in a really light wind scenario, that's where I'll pick up that 1/8 ounce or even like a 3/32 or something like that. But I try to keep it simple. Again, most of the time I'm just throwing a 1/4 ounce. I also think it's the easiest to feel and to see on the live scope if that dealie is going on. As far as the leader length between my hook and the weight, I'll vary that from like 6 inches to 18 inches. I really like to see where the fish are sitting in the water column or how closely they're relating to the bottom. As a general rule of thumb, I'll keep it longer in the summer or warmer water periods, and then as we get closer to winter or when we're in winter, that's where I'll shorten that drop shot up. That's my drop shot setup, and again, super simple. I try to keep it simple and it just flat out works. Right, I cut that drop shot off. I'm gonna retie it, show you guys exactly how I set this thing up. It's super simple, and the only knot you really need to know is a Palomar knot. So I'm gonna grab one of my Gamakatsu size 1 drop shot hooks. So you're going to want to tie your hook with a Palomar knot, and when you're tying that hook onto the line, you're going to want to have an excessively long tag end. Not insanely long, but long enough so you can leave a leader between the end of the hook and your weight. Alright, so you got your Palomar knot and your leader. And something else I always do right now, yes, the hook is standing hook point up, which is what you want, but after a few casts that's probably going to get wrecked and end up facing down. So I always take that tag end and I run it through the eye of the hook and make sure that it doesn't wrap itself over or under. You don't want an extra knot in there, you just want it to go straight through the bottom. And that way, your hook point will always stand up. Then after that, you're just gonna grab your weight, thread that on the line, choose how far down you want it. You're good to go. All right, we are all rigged up, ready to fish a little bit. So, first things first, when should you fish a drop shot? Honestly, it works all year round. There's never a bad time to fish it. It's something a lot of people will fall back onto if their plan A doesn't work or is not working out. And I definitely fall under that category. But lately, I've really been focusing on more finesse styles of fishing, just like the drop shot. As I was saying earlier, some people despise throwing this drop shot, but I'm telling you, it catches a ton of fish, and it actually catches some very big fish too. Yes, you are going to catch some small ones along with the bigger ones, but it's just like anything. I mean, granted, if you're throwing, you know, a 10-inch swim bait, it might be hard to catch like a 1-pound fish. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, throw the drop shot. There are many different ways that you can fish this. I don't think any one of them is 100% right. It's really just dependent on fish, but you can drag it, you can hop it, you can dead stick it, you can even swim it back to the boat and catch fish. But generally, what I'm gonna do is make a cast out and let that drop shot sink to the bottom. And I'm gonna use a combination of both, kind of dragging it and hopping it back to the boat for the retrieve. I'm gonna vary the time that I let it sit in between drags. I mean, that's something I'm constantly playing around with throughout the day, and I do think that that changes. Sometimes the fish will eat it on the fall. Sometimes they want it to sit on the bottom after the initial fall for 30 seconds. Sometimes they want it to sit there for a minute. And that's where, you know, you really want to implement dragging or dead sticking this thing. So that's when the bite is like extremely tough. But normally, this is what I'm doing. Making that cast out, watching my line or the live scope, letting it sink straight to the bottom. Gonna let it sit there for 5-10 seconds. Then I'm gonna reel up my slack, slowly pull that slack up till I can feel the weight. And from there, I'm just raising the rod tip. Sometimes I'll pop it like that and hop it. I know that a lot of people say you're not supposed to let the weight leave the bottom. Like, the whole deal with the drop shot is to keep that weight on the bottom of the lake and just drag it and like slowly pull it across. I don't believe that anymore. I've caught so many fish, I mean, obviously thanks to live scope, that I can see during my retrieve that I can hop this drop shot up to them if they're sitting in a piece of cover or just higher up in the water column, and they react to it. However, again, going with fishing on those tougher days or the days that you're just not getting bit, you do have to slow down, and I do find that's when it's best to keep that weight on the bottom, is like when you need to be dragging it, just slowly pulling it just like this, leaving lots of time for that bait just to sit and kind of marinate in between your pulls. There's a bite. Dropped it. I will say one thing that you will get accustomed to when you're throwing the drop shot, I just got another one, is, oh, this is actually a fish. Some days any bite will get you stoked. But anyway, as I was saying, that fish ate it as I was just slowly hopping it, letting it sit, and I felt him eat that on a slack line, which is something that you're gonna notice the more and more you fish these drop shots, is you'll know what's going on with it, even if you have a good amount of bow or slack in your line, and you can feel that bite. It's really like just a light tick, and sometimes when you reel your slack up and you have weight on it, it's almost mushy. Those are two things to keep a lookout for. And right now I'm just fishing a shallow point. It's only 7 feet right here leading into this little cut. And that's the other beautiful thing about the drop shot. It can literally be fished anywhere. One other thing I want to point out, there's a common misconception that you need to fish a drop shot in super clean water. Yes, it is awesome to throw it in clean water. I think that they bite it probably better because they can see it better from further away. However, that being said, what do we got here? This is, okay, so maybe like a foot. We'll say 1.5 foot of clarity here. And I literally just caught one. And I've caught quite a few over the last day and a half fishing a drop shot in this dirtier water. And that's something that kind of came as a surprise to me. Normally, when I think about fishing a drop shot, I'm thinking you need like 5-6 feet of clarity, but you really don't. Like even in this, and again, it's like, this is probably a 1.5 foot of clarity. And I'd probably fish it in slightly more stained water than this. And that's where I'd cut it off once it got super dirty. But don't be afraid to throw it around, or at least try. And this is, again, with water clarity and bait choice, that's where I'll choose a darker colored bait. But anyways, I was saying earlier, the cool thing about the drop shot, you can fish this literally anywhere. Docks, grass lines, points. You can fish it out in 40 feet of water. You can fish it out in 100 feet of water if you wanted, up to, you know, 1 foot or 2. You can fish shoreline wood, rock piles, brush piles, pretty much anywhere you can get this thing, you can catch fish on it, and it can be very, very effective. This is one thing with the live scope I will share with you. You're gonna watch 95% of those fish watch your drop shot or stare at it, chase it all the way down to the bottom, and just look at it. They won't eat. But that 5% of the time it works, it's pretty awesome. So if I can narrow it down for you guys, the times I would pick up a drop shot would be days like today, very light wind and bluebird skies, or if the bite is just ridiculously tough. It's also, in the summer and the winter, like a staple for me. All right, you guys, well, I really hope you enjoyed this video on drop shotting. I hope you learned a little bit. And if you're interested in any of the baits, hooks, line, weight, any of that I spoke about, I'm pretty sure it's available over at Angler's Choice's shop in store. And also be on the lookout for their online store, which is opening very, very soon. Don't forget to click that subscribe button for me on Angler's Choice's YouTube channel. And I'll see you guys on the next one.